There is a strange paradox in the modern world. The loudest voices often receive the most attention. The fastest people appear to be the most successful. The ones who constantly speak often seem the most confident. Yet if you look closely, history tells a different story. Many of the wisest people who ever lived were never the loudest in the room. They did not waste their energy trying to convince everyone. They did not fight to win every argument. They understood something that most people never discover. Silence is not weakness. Silence is power. Not the kind of power that dominates others, but the kind of power that allows you to master yourself. Most people believe that strength means having the perfect answer. The Stoics believed that real strength begins when you no longer feel the need to answer everything. Think about your own life. How many times have you spoken simply because the silence felt uncomfortable? How many arguments could have ended peacefully if one person had chosen not to react? How many regrets began with words that never needed to be spoken? Words can never be taken back. Once they leave your mouth, they belong to the world. Silence belongs only to you. It gives you time. Time to think. Time to understand. Time to choose whether your next action will be guided by wisdom or by emotion. Marcus Aurelius, who ruled one of the greatest empires in history, was surrounded by conflict every single day. He faced betrayal. He faced criticism. He faced impossible decisions. Yet when he wrote to himself, he rarely spoke about defeating others. Instead, he reminded himself to remain calm, to remain patient, to remain in control of his own mind, because he understood that the greatest victory is never over another person. It is over your own impulses. The world will constantly invite you to react. Someone will insult you. Someone will misunderstand you. Someone will judge you without knowing your story. The easiest response is to answer immediately, to defend yourself, to prove that you are right. But the Stoics asked a different question. Will speaking make the situation better? If the answer was no, then silence became the wiser choice. Silence is not surrender. Silence is discipline. It is the ability to pause when everyone else is rushing to react. It is the confidence to let your character speak louder than your words. Because people may forget what you say. They may even twist your words. But they will always remember the calmness with which you carried yourself. That calmness cannot be faked. It is built through patience, through self-control, through the quiet practice of mastering your own mind. And once you discover this quiet strength, you begin to realize that silence is not something to fear. It is something to cultivate. Because in silence, the strongest version of yourself finally has room to grow. There was a time when silence was a natural part of everyday life. People walked without reaching for a screen. They watched the sunrise without feeling the need to capture it. They sat beneath a tree simply listening to the wind. There was nothing to prove, nothing to post, nothing demanding their attention every few seconds. Today the world feels very different. The moment silence appears, something immediately rushes to replace it. A notification, a message, a video, a conversation, another opinion, another distraction. Without realizing it, we have become uncomfortable with stillness. We have trained ourselves to believe that every quiet moment must be filled. But have you ever wondered why? Why does a few minutes of silence sometimes feel more difficult than an hour of endless scrolling? Because silence asks something from us. It asks us to stop running. It asks us to notice the thoughts we have been trying to avoid. It asks us to face ourselves without distraction. And that can feel frightening. The Stoics understood this long before the modern world existed. They knew that people often seek noise not because noise brings peace, but because noise helps them escape. Escape from uncomfortable emotions. Escape from difficult questions. Escape from the quiet voice inside that asks whether we are truly living according to our values. Every distraction feels harmless on its own. A few more minutes. One more video. One more conversation. One more reason to postpone being alone with ourselves. Yet over time, those small distractions become a habit, and habits quietly shape our lives. A mind that is constantly entertained rarely has the opportunity to become deeply reflective. A heart that is constantly surrounded by noise finds it difficult to recognize its own wisdom. Marcus Aurelius spent countless hours surrounded by political conflict, military campaigns, and endless responsibilities. Yet, even in the middle of chaos, he searched for moments of solitude, not because he wished to escape the world, but because he understood that silence restores what noise slowly takes away. Clarity, patience, perspective. The world will always compete for your attention. It will tell you that every headline is urgent. Every argument deserves your opinion. Every notification requires an immediate response. But wisdom quietly asks a different question. What truly deserves my attention? That single question changes everything, because the quality of your life is shaped by the quality of what you choose to notice. When you begin protecting your silence, you also begin protecting your mind. And little by little, you discover that peace is not something the world can give you. It is something the world constantly tries to take away. The quieter you become, the easier it becomes to hear what truly matters. And that is where our next lesson begins. Not with speaking, but with learning the forgotten art of listening. There is a quiet difference between hearing and truly listening. Most people hear words. Very few hear meaning. While another person is speaking, many of us are already preparing our response. We are not listening to understand. We are listening to reply. Our minds race ahead, searching for the next argument, the next opinion, or the next opportunity to prove ourselves right. Without realizing it, we miss the very thing the other person is trying to share. The Stoics believed that wisdom begins with observation. Before you can judge wisely, you must first understand completely. And understanding requires patience. Imagine standing in a quiet forest. If you speak constantly, you will never notice the gentle rustling of the leaves. You will never hear the distant song of a bird. You will never become aware of the subtle sounds that have always been there. Life works in much the same way. The more noise we create, the less we are able to perceive. Silence sharpens awareness. It allows you to notice not only the words people speak, but also the emotions they struggle to express. Sometimes the most important part of a conversation is not what is said. It is what remains unspoken. A tired smile, a trembling voice, a long pause before an answer. These quiet moments often reveal far more than words ever could. Marcus Aurelius often reminded himself that every person acts according to what they believe to be true. Whether they are right or wrong, they are responding to the world through their own understanding. When you remember this, your first instinct is no longer to argue. It is to understand, and understanding changes the way you respond. The person who listens deeply rarely needs to raise their voice. They do not seek victory in every conversation. They seek clarity, because they know that winning an argument is far less valuable than preserving wisdom. There is also another listener you must learn to hear, the quiet voice within yourself, beneath the opinions of others, beneath the endless distractions, beneath the fear of being misunderstood. There is a calmer voice. It does not shout. It does not demand attention. It simply waits, patiently, for the moment when the noise finally fades. Only then can you hear what your conscience has been trying to tell you all along. Perhaps this is why silence has always been the companion of wisdom. Not because silence contains all the answers, but because it allows the right answers to finally be heard. And once you discover the wisdom that grows through listening, you begin to realize that the greatest conversations are not always spoken aloud. Some of the most important ones take place quietly, within your own heart. There is a quiet confidence that does not seek attention. It does not depend on praise. It does not grow because someone approves of it. And it does not disappear because someone refuses to understand it. Most people spend their lives trying to be seen, trying to be accepted, trying to convince the world that they are worthy. They measure their value by applause, by recognition, by the opinions of people who may never truly know them. The Stoics walked a different path. They believe that your character is not made stronger because others admire it. It is made stronger because you remain faithful to it even when no one is watching. Imagine an ancient oak tree standing alone on a hillside. It does not grow taller because someone compliments it. It does not stop growing because someone ignores it. Its roots reach deeper, not into the approval of others, but into the earth itself. A wise person lives in much the same way. Their peace is rooted within, not in the changing opinions of the crowd. Marcus Aurelius was one of the most powerful men in the world, yet he constantly reminded himself that praise and criticism are equally temporary. The same people who celebrate you today may judge you tomorrow. If your happiness depends on their voices, your peace will rise and fall with every opinion they express. That is not freedom. It is dependence wearing the disguise of success. Silence teaches something remarkable. When you stop explaining yourself to everyone, you begin to understand yourself more clearly. When you stop chasing validation, you discover values that cannot be taken away. Kindness, integrity, patience, humility. These qualities do not become greater because they are noticed. They become greater because they are practiced. There will always be people who misunderstand your intentions, who question your choices, who expect you to become someone you were never meant to be. You cannot silence every voice around you, but you can choose which voices deserve a place within your mind. Sometimes the strongest response is not another explanation. It is quiet consistency, to continue doing what is right, to continue acting with honesty, to continue living according to your principles, even when no one offers applause. Because true strength does not ask the world for permission to exist. It simply lives with quiet dignity. And in that quiet dignity, you discover a freedom that no amount of recognition could ever provide. There is a brief moment so small that most people never notice it. It exists between what happens to you and how you choose to respond. Within that single moment, your entire life can change. Someone speaks harshly to you. A message arrives that disappoints you. A stranger criticizes you. A plan falls apart. Almost instantly, your emotions begin to rise. Anger, fear, frustration, the impulse to defend yourself, the desire to prove someone wrong, the need to react immediately. Most people believe that these reactions are unavoidable. The Stoics believed otherwise. They understood that while emotions may appear without invitation, our response to them is always a choice. And that choice is protected by silence. Not the silence of avoiding life, but the silence of refusing to let emotion make your decisions. Imagine throwing a stone into a calm pond. The surface immediately begins to ripple. If you try to see your reflection at that moment, everything appears distorted. But if you simply wait, without touching the water, the ripples slowly disappear. The reflection returns, not because you forced it, but because you allowed the water to become still. The human mind works in the same way. When emotion first appears, clarity disappears. If you react immediately, you often respond to the emotion itself rather than to reality. Marcus Aurelius reminded himself that the best revenge is not becoming like the person who wronged you. Those words contain extraordinary wisdom, because every time you allow another person's behavior to control your own, you quietly surrender your freedom. Silence interrupts that surrender. It gives you a moment to breathe, a moment to observe, a moment to ask yourself, will this reaction bring peace, or will it create another problem? That single question has the power to prevent countless regrets. Many of the words we wish we could take back were spoken in moments when silence would have served us far better. Patience is rarely dramatic. Self-control rarely receives applause, yet they are among the greatest forms of strength a human being can possess. Because anyone can react, very few people can remain calm when every emotion demands that they do otherwise. And perhaps that is the true purpose of silence. Not to keep your voice hidden, but to give wisdom enough time to arrive before your words do. Many people fear being alone, not because solitude is painful, but because it leaves them alone with their own thoughts. In the presence of others, it is easy to become distracted. There is always another conversation, another responsibility, another voice asking for your attention. But when the room becomes quiet and no one else is there, something unexpected happens. The conversation turns inward. You begin to hear the questions that have patiently waited beneath the surface. Am I living according to my values? Have I been honest with myself? What kind of person am I becoming? These are not comfortable questions. Perhaps that is why so many people avoid silence. The Stoics, however, welcomed it. They understood that solitude was not an escape from the world. It was a return to themselves. Seneca often wrote about spending time in quiet reflection, not because he wished to withdraw from life, but because he knew that a person who never spends time alone will eventually forget who they truly are. Imagine a sword being forged in fire. It is heated. It is struck. It is shaped again and again. Without that process, it remains only a piece of metal. Character is forged in much the same way, not during moments of applause, not when everything is easy, but in the quiet moments when no one is watching. When you choose honesty, even though no one would discover the lie. When you choose patience, even though anger would feel easier. When you choose kindness, even though no reward is waiting. These decisions, made in silence, slowly shape the person you become. The world often celebrates visible success, a promotion, a title, recognition. But the Stoics believed that the greatest victories are invisible. A calmer mind, a gentler heart, the ability to remain steady when life refuses to be. Those victories are earned far away from the spotlight. They are built during ordinary mornings, quiet evenings, long walks, moments of reflection, when you choose growth instead of distraction. If you cannot enjoy your own company, the noise of the world will always seem necessary. But when you learn to sit peacefully with yourself, you discover something extraordinary. Solitude is no longer loneliness. It becomes a place of renewal, a place where your thoughts become clearer, your values become stronger, and your heart becomes quieter. Because the person you are when no one else is around is the person you truly are. And once you become comfortable in that quiet place, you no longer seek the world's noise to tell you who you should be. There is a common misunderstanding that has followed silence for generations. People often assume that the quiet person has nothing to say, that the one who does not argue has already lost, that speaking louder means standing stronger. But life quietly teaches a very different lesson. The strongest mountain never announces its presence. The deepest river flows without demanding attention. The brightest stars shine without making a sound. Nature has never confused noise with strength. Only people do. The Stoics believed that true strength is revealed not by how quickly you react, but by how completely you understand yourself. Anyone can raise their voice. Anyone can interrupt. Anyone can speak without thinking. But it takes discipline to remain composed when your emotions beg you to respond. Imagine standing before a raging fire. If you throw more wood into the flames, the fire grows stronger. But if you stop feeding it, the flames slowly begin to fade. Arguments often follow the same pattern. Every unnecessary word becomes another piece of wood. Every angry response keeps the fire alive. Silence, when chosen with wisdom, removes the fuel. This does not mean you should never speak. The Stoics never encouraged cowardice. When justice required action, they acted. When truth needed a voice, they spoke. But they refused to let pride decide when those moments should come. There is great wisdom in asking yourself, am I speaking because this is necessary, or because my ego wants to be heard? That single question can transform the way you communicate. Many conversations do not fail because people disagree. They fail because no one is willing to become quiet long enough to understand. Marcus Aurelius knew that a calm mind cannot be forced upon others. It can only be protected within yourself. The opinions around you will continue to rise and fall. The noise of the world will never completely disappear, but your response will always remain within your control. And perhaps that is the greatest freedom silence has to offer. Not the freedom to escape conflict, but the freedom to choose whether conflict will be allowed to enter your heart. Because silence is not the absence of courage. It is courage that no longer feels the need to shout. There is a person you have spent every moment of your life with, a person who has witnessed every success, every mistake, every fear, every dream, and yet that person may still be a stranger to you. That person is yourself. Many people spend their lives learning about the world. They learn new skills. They study history. They follow the lives of others. But they rarely pause long enough to understand their own minds. The Stoics believed that self-knowledge is the beginning of wisdom. Because how can you guide a life that you do not understand? How can you choose the right path if you have never taken the time to discover who is walking it? This is where silence becomes so valuable, not because it provides instant answers, but because it creates space for honest questions, questions that are often buried beneath distraction. What do I truly value? What am I afraid of? Why do certain words hurt me so deeply? Why do I continue repeating habits that no longer serve me? These questions cannot be answered by the noise of the crowd. They require reflection. They require patience. They require silence. Imagine a lake hidden deep within a forest. For years, storms have disturbed its surface. Branches have fallen into the water. Leaves have covered it. Mud has clouded its depths. At first glance, it seems impossible to see what lies beneath. But slowly, as the water becomes still, everything begins to reveal itself. The same is true of the human mind. Beneath your worries, there are values. Beneath your fears, there are desires. Beneath your distractions, there is a deeper understanding waiting to be discovered. Most people are afraid of what they might find. The Stoics encourage the opposite. They believe that truth, even when uncomfortable, is always more valuable than illusion, because only what is seen clearly can be improved. Marcus Aurelius spent countless hours examining his own thoughts. Not because he was searching for perfection, but because he understood that awareness is the first step toward growth. You cannot change a habit you refuse to acknowledge. You cannot heal a wound you pretend does not exist. And you cannot become wiser without first becoming honest. Silence helps us practice that honesty. It gently removes the distractions that keep us from ourselves. And in that quiet space, something remarkable begins to happen. You stop searching everywhere for answers. You stop expecting the world to explain who you are. Instead, you begin listening to the wisdom that has been growing within you all along. Because sometimes, the most important discovery you will ever make is not about the world around you. It is about the person you become when everything around you grows quiet. Your attention is one of the most valuable things you possess. Once a moment has passed, you can never reclaim it. Once your attention has been given, a part of your life has been spent. Yet most people give it away without ever noticing. A headline, a rumor, an argument between strangers, a careless opinion from someone they have never met. One notification becomes another. One distraction quietly invites the next. By the end of the day, their minds feel exhausted. Not because they accomplished something meaningful, but because they carried countless thoughts that were never theirs to carry. The Stoics understood that a peaceful life is not created by controlling everything around you. It is created by carefully choosing what deserves your attention. Imagine entering a vast library Thousands of books surround you. Each one promises knowledge. Each one asks to be opened, but you know that you cannot read them all. Wisdom is not found by opening every book. It is found by choosing the right one. Life asks us to make the same decision every single day. Not every opinion deserves a response. Not every criticism deserves your energy. Not every invitation deserves your time. Silence gives you the space to ask a simple question. Will this matter a year from now? Many of the worries that consume us today will be forgotten long before the seasons change. Yet while they are happening, they feel enormous, not because they truly are, but because our attention has magnified them. Marcus Aurelius often reminded himself to separate what is essential from what is merely distracting. He knew that the mind becomes stronger when it is not constantly pulled in every direction. A scattered mind cannot produce a peaceful life. Like sunlight passing through a magnifying glass, attention becomes powerful only when it is focused. When you stop chasing every distraction, you begin to notice what has quietly been waiting for you all along. Meaningful work, honest relationships, simple moments of gratitude, the quiet joy of doing one thing well. These are the things that slowly build a meaningful life. They rarely demand your attention. They patiently wait for it. The world will always compete for your focus. It will always tell you that everything is urgent. Everything is important. Everything deserves your concern. Silence gently reminds you that this is not true. Some things are worthy of your mind. Many things are only passing noise. And the quality of your life will always depend on your ability to know the difference. There is a remarkable difference between living with intention and simply reacting to whatever happens next. Many people wake each morning already being pulled by the expectations of others. Another notification, another obligation, another demand asking for their attention. Before the day has truly begun, their peace has already been given away. Without realizing it, they spend their lives responding to pressure, responding to criticism, responding to urgency, rarely stopping to ask themselves, what truly matters today? The Stoics believed that a meaningful life is never built by accident. It is built through deliberate choices that are made not in moments of panic, but in moments of clarity. And clarity is born from silence. Imagine an archer preparing to release an arrow. If his hands are trembling, if his breathing is rushed, if his eyes are distracted, the arrow will almost certainly miss its target. But when his body becomes still, when his breathing slows, when his entire attention rests upon a single point, the arrow flies exactly where it was meant to go. Our lives follow the same principle. A distracted mind creates a distracted life. A peaceful mind creates purposeful action. Marcus Aurelius understood that every day offered countless opportunities to waste time on things that did not deserve it. Yet he continually reminded himself to return to what was essential, to act with justice, to speak with honesty, to work with diligence, to accept what could not be changed. These were not extraordinary acts. They were ordinary choices made consistently. That is how character is built, not through one heroic moment, but through thousands of quiet decisions. The world often celebrates dramatic achievements. The Stoics celebrated consistent virtue because they knew that greatness is rarely created in a single day. It is quietly shaped every morning, every conversation, every decision that no one else ever sees. When your life is guided by purpose, you no longer feel the need to chase every distraction. You no longer measure success by how busy you appear. Instead, you begin measuring your days by a quieter standard. Did I act with integrity? Did I remain calm? Did I become a slightly better person than I was yesterday? If the answer is yes, then the day has already been meaningful, because purpose is not found by doing more. It is found by doing what truly matters, with a quiet mind and a steady heart. When most people think about legacy, they imagine great achievements, a famous name, a remarkable career, a life remembered by millions. But the Stoics saw legacy through a different lens. They believed that the greatest influence is often invisible. Think back to the people who have changed your life. Perhaps it was not the loudest person you ever met. Perhaps it was someone who listened without judgment. Someone who remained calm when everyone else became angry. Someone whose quiet presence made you feel safe. Long after their words have faded, you still remember how they made you feel. That is the kind of legacy silence creates. It is not built through endless speeches. It is built through quiet consistency. Every act of patience, every moment of kindness, every time you choose understanding instead of pride. These moments may seem small. They may even go unnoticed, but they leave marks upon the hearts of others. Imagine walking through a peaceful garden. You may not remember every flower you passed. You may not remember every stone beneath your feet, but you remember how peaceful the garden made you feel. Some people carry that same peace wherever they go, not because they speak beautifully, but because they have learned to live beautifully. Marcus Aurelius knew that no title, no wealth, and no victory would last forever. One day, every empire would disappear, every monument would weather with time. Every generation would eventually become memory. So he asked himself a different question. Not, how can I be remembered? But, how can I live rightly today? That question changes everything. Because when you stop chasing recognition, you begin creating something far more meaningful. A life that quietly encourages others simply by the way you live. You may never know whose burdens become lighter because of your patience, whose fears become smaller because of your calmness, whose life changes because you chose compassion instead of anger. Not every influence needs to be visible. Some of the deepest changes begin quietly. One conversation, one act of grace, one moment when someone discovers that peace is possible simply because they witnessed it within you. Perhaps that is the greatest legacy any of us can leave. Not a life that demanded attention, but a life that quietly reminded others that wisdom still exists. As we come to the end of this journey, perhaps you have begun to see silence differently. Perhaps you no longer see it as an empty space or an awkward pause that needs to be filled. Perhaps you now recognize it for what it has always been, a place where wisdom quietly waits. Throughout this reflection, we have spoken about listening instead of rushing to speak, about choosing calm instead of reacting, about protecting your attention, about discovering yourself beneath the endless noise of the modern world. But none of these lessons were truly about silence alone. They were about freedom, the freedom to choose your response, the freedom to remain steady when the world becomes chaotic, the freedom to live according to your values instead of your impulses. The Stoics understood that the greatest prison was never built with walls. It was built inside a restless mind, a mind that could never stop comparing, never stop worrying, never stop seeking the approval of others, never stop chasing the next distraction. And they also understood that the key to unlocking that prison was not found in changing the world. It was found in changing the relationship you have with your own thoughts. Imagine returning once again to the quiet garden where our journey began. The morning light still rests upon the ancient stone. The olive tree still stands without asking to be admired. The gentle breeze still moves through the leaves. Nothing has changed. And yet, everything has changed. Because the garden was never meant to transform you. It simply reminded you of something you had forgotten. That peace has never depended on how loud the world becomes. It has always depended on how quietly you are able to return to yourself. There will still be difficult days. There will still be disappointment. There will still be criticism. There will still be moments when anger, fear, or doubt knock upon your door. The Stoics never promised a life without storms. They offered something far more valuable, a way to remain steady while the storm passes through. That is the gift of silence, not the absence of sound, but the presence of inner stability. So as you leave this reflection, carry one simple question with you. Does this moment deserve my reaction? Or does it deserve my silence? Ask yourself that question whenever life tries to pull you into unnecessary conflict, whenever your emotions begin to outrun your wisdom, whenever the noise of the world becomes louder than the quiet voice within you. You may discover that silence is not something you lose. It is something you return to, again and again. And every time you choose it wisely, you become a little calmer, a little stronger, a little freer. Because in the end, the strongest voice you will ever hear is not the loudest one around you. It is the quiet one within you, the one that has patiently waited for you to finally listen.